The six-pointed star. Instantly recognizable, right? It's an international symbol of Jewish identity, and of course it's on the flag of the State of Israel. But what if? What if its origins aren't quite what we assume? Our mission today is to explore a really fascinating investigation into this symbol's history. We'll be drawing from sources that, frankly, challenge common ideas and show some surprising connections. We're going to trace its journey from ancient times right up to its place today. And just a reminder, we're guiding you through what the source material says. We're not taking sides, just presenting the research and ideas found within it.
Exactly. And our main source for this deep dive is O.J. Graham's book from 1984 called The Six-Pointed Star. It's a pretty detailed look, and it really pulls back the curtain on this symbol that many of us, just accept without question.
Yeah, and Graham's book kicks off with a pretty bold idea. This star, even though it's everywhere now, might not actually be Jewish in origin at all. He talks about how he got curious back in '79. He was at York University, and an Orthodox Jewish friend of his actually questioned if the star was really authentically Jewish, and Graham himself wore one proudly back then. Makes you think, doesn't it, when even people deeply connected to a symbol start asking questions?
It really does. And Graham isn't, making this up in a vacuum. He points to M. Hirsch Goldberg's book, The Jewish Connection, and Goldberg states it flat out. The Star of David is not of Jewish origin, and the ancient Israelites never used it as their religious symbol. That's quite a statement. The source says it only became the official emblem in 1897.
1897, that's surprisingly recent in the grand scheme of things.
It is. That's when Theodor Herzl's Zionist conference picked it for their movement. Less than 130 years ago. And, get this, the sources also say that the 12 tribes back in the land of Israel, they each had symbols, sure, but not one of them used this star. There's even this archaeological find, a mosaic in Ramel, dated to about 776 AD. It has the six-pointed star. But it was identified as Muslim, not Jewish.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay. So I imagine a lot of people listening are thinking, wait a minute, it's called the Star of David. It's everywhere. How can this be right? And that's exactly the assumption we're digging into today.
Right. So first, what is this symbol geometrically? The Universal Jewish Encyclopedia describes it as two equilateral triangles interlaced so as to form a hexagonal star, where every point touches a circle with the same radius as the triangle sides. It's very precise. But when you look at its ancient roots outside of Judaism, well, according to Rosicrucian sources mentioned by Graham, it was known way back by ancient Egyptians, Hindus, Chinese, Peruvians.
Egyptians, huh? That connection is interesting given the history of the Israelites in Egypt.
It is. And Graham's book brings in scripture too. Acts 7.43 says, "Yea, ye took up the tabernacle of Moloch, and the star of your god Remphan, figures which ye made to worship." And Amos 5, verses 25 and 26, "So shall ye take up Sicketh your king, and Chiun your images, the star of your god which ye made to yourselves."
Remphan, Chiun, what do those mean?
Well, the source clarifies that both words essentially mean star, and they specifically refer to the star of Saturn. Graham suggests this specific star symbol was known to the ancient Egyptians and maybe even some Hebrews during the Exodus.
Okay, so we've got a symbol tied to pagan gods. Saturn specifically, even mentioned negatively in the Bible, present way back then. But it didn't just stay in Egypt, right? What else did Graham find about where it popped up?
Oh, it's quite a list. Graham, citing sources like the Universal Jewish Encyclopedia again, shows this thing was, well, everywhere. It wasn't confined to one group. You find it on Arabic amulets, in Byzantine magic texts, medieval books of magic, German folklore, relics in the Templars, alchemy sometimes called the Stone of the Wise. It's even in the coat of arms for Freemasons, their Order of the Seal of Solomon. And in churches, like in Italy and Germany, even bizarrely on tavern signboards in South Germany, used by Pythagoreans there. And just to underscore the non-Hebrew connection, the dictionaries define hex, like in Hexagram, as an evil spell, a witch, or something bringing bad luck.
Well, hex literally means a curse.
Okay. So how did it get linked to Solomon? The Seal of Solomon. Graham connects it directly to King Solomon's period of disobedience. 1 Kings 11 tells us he did evil in the sight of the Lord. He built high places for pagan gods like Chemosh, Molech, and Ashtoreth actually means star. This was after God had appeared to him twice, warning him. It was right around this time, according to the source, that the hexagram got called the Seal of Solomon and became a key part of pagan worship.
So the source is saying the name itself comes from a time of Solomon breaking faith, turning to other gods, not from his wisdom or piety.
Exactly. Which makes you ask, well, which David are we even talking about with the Star of David?
Right, because King David of Israel.
King David, he always said God was his shield. You see it in the Psalms, like Psalm 3.3, Psalm 144.2. He was never an idolater. There's zero record connecting him to this star symbol. Graham brings up another possibility from Arthur Koestler. He suggests the star is a magical symbol from maybe the 12th century A.D., attributed to an Ashkenazic Jew named Menahem ben Duji, who renamed himself David Alroy and claimed he was the Messiah.
A different David entirely, a self-proclaimed Messiah.
Right, and this star apparently first showed up on a Jewish flag much later, in Prague, 1527. The Encyclopedia Britannica even calls it a magical sign popularized through practical Kabbalah for protection against evil spirits, widely used in Arabic magic too.
So the connection leans more towards magic and occultism than ancient Israelite faith.
That's what the sources Graham uses suggest. They mention things like Solomon's mirror for divination, Solomon's triangle. The Sorcerer's Handbook apparently calls Solomon an arch-magician using spells. Other sources label the star the talisman of Saturn. But crucially, the Book of Talismans, Amulets, and Zodiacal Gems admits the star didn't even start with Solomon. It was used for Ashtoreth and Moloch worship long before him. He just adopted it when he went astray.
Okay, this is quite a different history than the popular understanding. So how did a symbol with this kind of background, according to these sources, paganism, magic, condemnation, become so central to modern Jewish identity?
Well, Graham traces its rise within Jewish circles largely to the influence of Kabbalism. The Universal Jewish Encyclopedia notes it started appearing on synagogues around the 16th century. That timing lines up with the spread of influence from the Kabbalist Isaac Luria.
And Kabbalism itself, the source describes it how?
As involving mystic jugglery with numbers and letters, conjuration of devils, and links to astrology, which the source points out the Bible condemns in Deuteronomy 18.
It's genuinely startling, isn't it, how a symbol with that backstory could end up representing a whole people, a nation-state. How does Graham explain that final leap into modern acceptance?
It's a fascinating convergence of factors in modern times. First, the Rothschild family. In 1822, they adopted it for their coat of arms. Apparently, their name itself comes from this. Mayor Amschel Bauer, back in 17th century Frankfurt, used a red hexagram, a Rothschild, or red shield, to mark his business address. He later changed the family name.
Rothschild literally meaning red shield, the shield being the hexagram. Wow.
Then the writer Heinrich Heine started using it as a Jewish identifier around 1840. And the big moment, as mentioned before, was 1897. Dr. Theodor Herzl's first Zionist conference in Basel. They officially chose the six-pointed star as the movement's insignia.
So Rothschild adoption, then Zionist adoption.
Right, and then there's that really chilling paradox. Adolf Hitler forces Jews to wear a yellow version as a badge of shame, while around the same time it's being voluntarily embraced by influential families and formally adopted by the Zionist movement, aiming to establish a Jewish state.
That contrast is jarring.
It is. And today, of course, it's everywhere. On the Israeli Knesset building, flying on the national flag since 1948, the symbol for the Magen David Adam Israel's Red Cross equivalent, the Red Shield of David. It's interesting, though. Herzl's first idea for the Zionist flag was apparently 7 gold stars on a white background. He got overruled.
7 stars, not 6 points.
And that number difference, 6 versus 7, is something Graham's book really digs into. It presents this interpretation of the 6-pointed star containing a 6 within a 6 within a 6.
How do they get that?
By counting the sides of each triangle, 1 clockwise, 1 counterclockwise, that's 2 6s, and then the 6 sides of the inner hexagon, 3 6s, 666. The book asks, is this 666 symbol a kind of warning? Does it point to a false messiah? That's the question posed by the source.
And that's contrasted with the number 7.
Very much so. The source stresses that 7 has long been symbolic for the Hebrew people. It's seen as God's perfect number. Think about it. God rests on the 7th day, the 70 elders of Israel, 70 years of fast. Lots of examples.
So, if not the 6-pointed star, what should be the symbol, according to this perspective?
The menorah, the 7-branch candlestick. It's explicitly commanded by God in Exodus 25 for the tabernacle. It was central. Professor Michael Aviona is cited saying the menorah was regarded as the main symbol of Judaism after the destruction of the temple. So the source suggests adopting the 6-pointed star was maybe a kind of rationalization, trying to fit it into Jewishness, despite its links to things like astrology, which is prohibited. The book's conclusion on this is pretty blunt. The 6-pointed star does not belong within the Hebraic tradition.
This really goes beyond just history, doesn't it? It forces you to think about what symbols truly mean, why we adopt them, and if those origins matter. It's definitely uncomfortable territory for some.
It is. And Graham's book pushes even further into biblical prophecy, connecting it all to the 6-pointed star. Again, this is the source's interpretation we're relaying here. It discusses passages from Daniel 11 and Revelation 13. It talks about a figure called the willful king, often seen as the Antichrist, who shall do according to his will, exalting himself above God. His power, the source says, isn't his own but from Satan, and he gains power through flatteries, not votes.
Okay. And how does the star fit into this interpretation?
Well, the author links this to the mark of the beast from Revelation 13, the mark needed to buy or sell. The passage mentions the number 6666. And the book asks, could the hexagram, with its interpreted 3 sixes, be related to this mark? Could it be a symbol of a false messiah? It also raises questions about modern Zionism. Is it, as the source puts it, merely man's attempt to bring about the repatriation by human action? Or is it the divine regathering prophesied? It notes the Talmud teaches their messiah will be a political leader.
And the source's conclusion about the modern state.
It points to things like potential changes to Israel's law of return, possibly barring some Jews unless they are politically aligned, as evidence, in the author's view, that this is not the absolute divine regathering spoken of by the prophets.
Wow. That's a lot to process. We've gone from ancient Egypt and pagan gods through magic and Kabbalism to the Rothschilds, Zionism, the Holocaust, and right into interpretations of end times prophecy. It really shows how complex the history of even the most familiar symbol can be, challenging perceptions at every turn.
It certainly does. And the book leaves the reader, and you listening, with a pretty direct question stemming from all this research. It asks, should such a pagan symbol, which has its roots in magic and witchcraft condemned by the God of Israel, be flying on the flag of biblical Israel? Surely the subject bears some consideration.
A provocative thought to end on. We hope this deep dive has given you plenty to think about and maybe sparked your own curiosity to look deeper into the stories behind the symbols and beliefs we encounter every day.